Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for this very special video here on the Popular Speed YouTube channel. I'm Brandon Butler. I am one of the new staff writers for PopularSpeed.com, and today we're joined by a very special guest. For those of you that are avid gamers and NASCAR fans, we have joining us today Ed Martin, who is the Executive Vice President of North American Operations for Eutechnyx, who are the makers of the NASCAR The Game series. Ed, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Brandon. A little bit chilly this time of year, but I'm doing great. Not exactly NASCAR weather going on
No,
right
it isn't.
now.
Thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. We really appreciate it.
Happy to do it. I love doing these things. Good to talk about all the hard work we've been doing the last year.
Hopefully all that hard work pays off for you.
Yeah, well, we hope so. You guys are the judges, though, but hopefully it does.
Now, for those of you out there who don't know who Ed is, like I said, he's the Executive Vice President of North American Operations for Eutechnyx. But why don't you give us a bit of a background on what you have done in the past, so that people can be more familiar with you?
Sure. Well, I'm going to test people's ages and memories out there a little bit. I actually started the industry back in 1993, so my 20th anniversary has passed. How scary is that? Started working at Papyrus, the guys that created the very first NASCAR game. I joined Papyrus just after they shipped IndyCar and while they were working on NASCAR. And worked with them on NASCAR 1, NASCAR 2, IndyCar 2. But really my focus there was something that became known as the NASCAR Racing Online series, which was the first real online massive multiplayer racing series that was out there. Went from there to Hasbro Interactive and started NASCAR there, ran the NASCAR Heat franchise for them until we shipped our first NASCAR Heat products on PC and console, and for the first time, EA got outsold. And they weren't very happy about that, but they were happy to pick up the phone and call me and basically threaten me into a job saying, you want to come work for us or we're just going to take you out with sales. They were only half jesting as EA was a beast. So they did convince me to move from where I grew up in Massachusetts and move down to Maitland, Florida, where the Tiburon studio is down there, and ran basically any of the EA games that were called NASCAR Thunder. Those were mine. When I came in, we changed the name to NASCAR Thunder, and shortly after I left, they changed it to something else. So if you like NASCAR Thunder, my fault. If you didn't like the other ones, not my fault. But left there in 2004. Worked still within the NASCAR world, but outside of the gaming world for a little while. And then got back into the NASCAR gaming world when Eutechnyx picked up the NASCAR license in 2009, and I've been with them pretty much since they got the license. I'm based here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've been focusing mainly on the business stuff and the licensing, but also all the product development and everything ultimately reports up into me as well. Thank God we've got an unbelievable team over in the UK that stays on top of it. Although I find myself on an airplane flying over there an awful lot these days.
I'm sure it's tiresome to have to go back and forth all the way from North Carolina to the UK, North Carolina and UK.
It's being on an airplane can take it out of you a little bit. It's not that bad. You kind of get used to the travel. The one thing that drives me nuts, and if anybody from Delta Airlines is listening, please get internet on international flights. You're killing me. On domestic flights, you can really just treat it like an office. And sure, I'll sit there and read a book or watch a movie. But when you're sitting there for a 7-hour flight from Atlanta to Amsterdam, you really wish you could get some work done. And without the internet, you just can't.
Yeah.
So I get a lot more done and sort of treat it as a business day.
Yeah.
But it takes about, from the time I leave my home airport here in Charlotte until I land in Newcastle, where we're based, it's about 15 or 16 hours of travel in 5 time zones. So that takes it out of you.
Yeah. Sometimes though, I mean, you got to think about it this way. Sometimes you do need some time off and relax, even if it's on an airplane for about 8 hours.
Yeah,
if not more.
No, there's definitely something to be said for it. And also, it's great to, when you get there, you hit the ground running. I mean, we've got some amazing talent over there. So to be able to get over there and work with those guys is great. There's also an advantage to the time zones. I mean, it is hard as it is in the morning. When I wake up here, they're already 5 hours ahead of me. So half their day is over by the time I even get online. But we are actually extending the day pretty substantially because we've got the Eutechnyx guys over in Newcastle. I'm here, and then our distributor. I'm sure we'll talk about this later in the interview, but it's Deep Silver, and they're based in California. So we've really got a spread of 8 time zones from Newcastle to California, which means we're working on this game overall much longer every day than you would normally think. It's not just a 9 to 5. It's never 9 to 5, but
No.
starting 5 hours early and we're going 3 hours late, which really, sometimes it can be tiring because I'm answering phone calls at 6 in the morning and 9 at night, but we do get a lot more done that way.
Now, speaking of your job, what are some of the things that your job entails as vice president of North American operations?
Yeah, it's a lot of the stuff is probably not the exciting stuff that people that are watching this are into. Everybody's like, oh, it's all about the game, and it is. Right now we've sort of readjusted things a little bit, so development and art reports up into me as well. Dave Thompson, who's been the executive producer on the game, is focusing on another one of our franchises, Auto Club Revolution, right now. So I'm working very much on the development side. I've always been involved in sort of the design of the games because I've been around it for a long time. Plus, I'm the quote-unquote NASCAR guy that Eutechnyx brought in because I've been working for it for so long. So there's always been that part of it. The stuff that probably isn't all that exciting to the folks watching this, but it's incredibly important to getting the game done, is I focus a lot on the business side of it. So that's licensing, approvals, and relationships. So to give you an example, I mentioned that I worked at EA Sports. Well, the studio that I was at also did Madden football. And it's fine. I'm sure the guys in Newcastle are saying, oh, God, he's telling this story again. But I love this story. At Tiburon, they did the Madden title. And Madden had exactly 3 licenses in it. Had the NFL Players Association, Players Inc., and John Madden. That's it. With those 3 licenses, you had everything you need to do Madden football. When we were shipping the NASCAR Thunder games, we had over 500 licenses in NASCAR. Because everything in this sport is a separate license. Each team is independent. Sponsors can be independent. It gets crazy sometimes, Brandon. We're down to billboard levels at tracks. So we've got to be dealing with Purina and WSOC here in Charlotte so that we have the rights to put their billboard on Charlotte Motor Speedway and make sure all those things are cleared, because if you ship a game, you don't have the rights to put something in there, you got some big legal problems. So NASCAR 14, the game we're shipping right now, has almost 1,000 licensing properties in it. So that's the boring stuff that nobody there cares about, but it makes the game realistic. If we don't have all that stuff in there, it's not real. And the more that we can get in there, the cooler. So we go after alternate paint schemes and more drivers and, everything, at the tracks down to gory details, especially now that the graphics are so powerful. You can see everything. You didn't used to be able to read those contingency decals. Now they're life-size on a 50-inch plasma TV, right?
Exactly. But, if you think about it now with next-gen consoles, just imagine what the technology can do for NASCAR titles. Yeah,
no, there's definitely some really exciting stuff coming. We can start getting into 3D and much higher resolutions and higher frame rates. If you run, the existing game on the PC version of NASCAR 13, with just a mediocre video card, that's running at 60 frames a second.
Yeah.
It looks amazing. And certainly with next-gen consoles, that'll all be possible.
Now, one other thing in terms of your job, are you the guy that goes over and does like the voiceovers, and you're the one that handles like all the driver, feedback and all that?
Yeah, well, I don't do the voiceovers myself. I've been told I have a radio voice from time to time, but I'm not.
You do sound like someone who could have a radio voice. Honestly.
Yeah, I typically do work with all the folks to get that stuff done. So we've done a lot of work with the guys from Fox Sports. They've been an amazing partner for us. So Darryl Waltrip and Mike Joy do the intros to all the events in career mode. This year we have Jeff Hammond, who's now on board. He's the crew chief for the game.
Oh, nice.
So that's a new voice that'll be in the game this year. Doug Rice and Mark Garrow at MRN have done a bunch of stuff for us. Dave Moody at I'm sorry, Doug and Mark at PRN. Sorry, Doug and Mark. Now I know that phone call is going to ring this afternoon. And Doug and Mark from PRN, Dave Moody from MRN has done a bunch. And then ironically, a friend of mine, Ty Norris, who's become a little bit of a taboo subject in the sport over the last few months since Richmond. Ty is back once again as the spotter in the game. Apparently, NASCAR's indefinite ban of Ty does not apply to our game, and he and I have had an awful lot of laughs about that. Not to go too far off track, but last time I chatted with him, he was saying that it was really funny right around Richmond. There were all the people upset. And he said we were getting death threats, and then he said the funniest tweet that I saw, Ed, is that when somebody said to him, "When I play the game and I hear you telling me to go into the pits, now I'm not sure what I should do if I might get fined or thrown out of the sport. I'm not sure who to listen to anymore." So Ty is back. He's happy to be back, and hopefully we see him back in the sport too. He's a good guy.
That's great to see. I mean, the first thing I would remember playing NASCAR 2011 was hearing Ty Norris.
Yep.
Like if I hit a car, he's like, "Oh, you just hit a car. Watch out," or something like that. I can't really remember exactly what he said, but I remember him talking. So
yeah, it's funny. A lot of the guys, especially the Fox guys and the PRN and MRN guys, they're used to doing voiceovers. They're on TV or the radio all the time, and they've done voiceover work. Ty hadn't really done it before, but we wanted to have a really cool, name and top-notch guy to do the spotter. And Ty and I had done some work together, and I knew his kids were really into video games. Like, "Hey, you want to be really cool to your sons?" He's like, "Yeah, what do you got?" So, "I want you to be the spotter in the game." "Oh, man, yeah, man." It's like, "Well, before you answer, you got about 2,000 lines that you need to read. And it's going to take several hours." Like, "How long do you think it's going to take?" It's like, "Well, if we had a professional voiceover guy in there, it's probably going to be, 5 or 6, maybe 7 hours. But that's it. No problem. I'm in." We ended up having Ty in the booth for 10 hours.
Wow.
And then we brought him back the following year and did about another 2 hours. So he spent an awful lot of time in the recording booth getting all this stuff done for us. But it pays off. It's cool to have him.
It does. It does, especially after you're the one doing the voiceover work, and then you really start to appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun, and those sessions are really cool because the guys are very much into the sport, and they really like being in the game. And Doug Rice loves to tell me that he gets as many comments about his PRN broadcast as he does about being in the game. It's like, "You're the guy from the video game. I know your voice." And it's because it's that younger demographic that's playing the video game.
Yeah.
It's going to be typically an older demographic that's listening to those guys on the radio. And it's a really nice blend to bring those two together. And they really have a lot of fun with it.
It seems like to me that they do. They really have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, there's some. We'll do another interview someday, but there's some wild stories about some of the stuff we've done. We did when DW and Mike Joy did the intros last year. We actually did it at the MRN studio, and the Dave Moody and Angie Skinner's Sirius Satellite Show.
Yeah,
it's done at the MRN studio, so they were literally right across the hall from us, broadcasting live on Sirius XM. And DW and Mike Joy decided once we were done, they were going to walk into the studio, and they literally crashed their radio show. Moody really cool. And Angie were on the phone with who the heck was it? Kelly Earnhardt. They were on with Kelly, and they walked in, and Dave is like, "What do you do?" I mean, obviously nobody can see a broadcast of what's going on there. It was like, "Oh my God!" Darryl Waltrip and Mike Joy just walked in, and they all hopped on the microphone, and they took over the next 2 segments of the show, completely threw their schedule out of control. But it was really kind of cool, for them to have those guys come walking in, and they're all friends. Mike, heritage goes back to MRN, so it was really cool to have those guys in there, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
It just goes to show you how great those guys are.
Yeah, I'll tell you, what you see on TV is genuinely what these guys are in person. They are just top notch.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, and funny. I mean, so some of the outtakes. I think the classic was Mark Garrow singing Barry Manilow. That one has never seen the light of day, but it was a little weird.
Good stories, a lot of good stories.
Cool.
Moving on. It was just recently announced that Eutechnyx launched a consumer label called ETX Racing. Now, first of all, what made you guys decide to create this consumer label? And 2, will this new consumer label mean that NASCAR The Game will be published under ETX Racing?
It will be. I haven't even had the chance to get a shirt with ETX Racing done yet. ETX Racing, the brand, has really been in the works. We've been talking about it for more than a year. As the company has evolved, and we're doing, more than just Auto Car Revolution or more than just NASCAR, it seemed like we needed to have more of a distinctive racing brand. And to be honest, we kind of looked at other companies and what they have done. And Electronic Arts is sort of a great model, right? They have Electronic Arts as the main company, but then they have brands underneath. They have EA Sports, they have EA Games, for example. We kind of wanted to go in that same direction. So everything in our racing game family will fall under ETX Racing. Everything that falls outside of that might fall under ETX Mobile or ETX Games. And those haven't been officially decided or announced or anything. I'm not pre-announcing anything here, but we feel that we need to sort of branch out and do things under different brand names. We've got another mobile game out there right now called Ninja Cats vs. Samurai Dogs, which is a tower defense game. And it doesn't really fit with the racing genre. But the reason that came about is when we were getting into mobile, we had a lot of guys internally who were very interested in it. We didn't really have any experience developing mobile games. So they came up with this idea and said, hey, let's run with this. And we'll just do it as a proof of concept. And it ended up being a really cool game. And we finished it and released it. And it's doing quite well. But that doesn't fit under Eutechnyx. Suddenly, Eutechnyx became a catch-all for, are you ACR? Are you NASCAR? Are you Cats versus Dog? What are you?
Exactly.
It needs to be, its own racing brand. So, we wish we were as big as Electronic Arts, but just to give you an analogy, what Electronic Arts is, that's the Eutechnyx brand. What EA Sports is, that's the ETX Racing brand. We also have another division called Zero Light, which does some of the coolest technology I've ever seen. Doesn't really have anything to do with gaming, but we take all of our gaming technologies and we're applying it to things outside of gaming. So, for example, we're doing virtual showrooms, life-size virtual showrooms for auto manufacturers across Europe. So you walk up to a screen, it tracks your motions. You have a life-size, three-dimensional car in front of you, not Star Trek holodeck. We're only doing 4K, big panels and projectors and things like that. But it's a one-to-one ratio. You are literally sitting there manipulating a life-size vehicle, configuring it to how you want it configured, seeing it drive around on actual streets. Very, very cool stuff. And it's using all of the game technology we've done for years, and that's our Zero Light division. So again, under Eutechnyx, there is Zero Light, just like there is ETX Racing.
That is really cool.
But and to answer the other part of your question, yes, NASCAR 14 will be the first game that we ship that'll be under that ETX Racing brand. In fact, you can go to etxracing.com right now, or etxracing.com/NASCAR. Either one takes you to the same place, and there's a preview page up for the NASCAR 14 game.
I will put that in the description of the video as well, so that people could check that out.
And it's a lot easier to spell than Eutechnyx.
It is. I mean, it's only like, for Eutechnyx, it's only like, what, 3 letters? ETX.
Yeah, ETX, you can't go wrong. We even spelled of it for you, and racing's easy, so.
Yeah, exactly. Now, as you already mentioned, Deep Silver in October announced NASCAR 14. Since you guys have incorporated the license to NASCAR, you guys have also incorporated the game into the titles. Why the sudden change for 2014?
Well, I figured if we were doing ETX Racing, let's change everything, right? No, not really that. With NASCAR 14, well, let's go back in time. We started NASCAR The Game, NASCAR The Game 2011, NASCAR The Game Inside Line, and the real story of why we added the game on there is we were sitting down with the marketing guys and like, look, nobody's going to know the name Eutechnyx, and if it's just NASCAR in a year, it's not necessarily building brand equity back to us as the company creating these games now. And literally the analogy we got is if this ended up on the side of a cup at Burger King or McDonald's, are people going to know that it's a video game? So let's be literal and just call it NASCAR The Game. It's like, well, all right, that's fine. So NASCAR The Game, NTG, we kind of went with that.
That makes sense.
Eventually that does start to fall apart. We had NASCAR The Game 2011. We have NASCAR The Game Inside Line. We have NASCAR The Game 2013. The game started becoming the extraneous thing on there that wasn't making sense to us. So we decided, all right, we're gonna rebrand the console franchise, and we're just going to go back to what is typical of sports games, and what is going to be NASCAR 14 with an apostrophe. Has to have the apostrophe. Otherwise, the 14 belongs to Tony Stewart. And he's a friend, but he doesn't want to give us that car number. So it's NASCAR apostrophe 14. And that's going to be the console franchise. Then we're able to go off and do things like NASCAR Redline, which is our first mobile game. And it just fits better. We flirted around with it. We call it NASCAR The Game Redline. It's like, oh my God, this is just getting way too long. You thought Eutechnyx was a hard thing to say. So that's really why we decided to rebrand the franchise. And again,
That
not
makes sense.
pre-announcing anything, but pretty easy to think that, well, gee, maybe there could be a NASCAR 15 and a NASCAR 16 and a NASCAR 7. It becomes a lot more logical of where we're
Yeah.
going. People will know, and we built that brand.
I
So
mean,
that's really why the change there. On Deep Silver, each one of the titles we've done to date, we've gone out and signed a deal with who we felt was going to be the best publisher at the time to get our game out there. Now, the publisher for us, we do all the licensing. We do all the development, we do all that stuff. So it's a very different deal than normal when we go to these guys. The publisher is responsible for two major things. Number one, get it on the store shelves, get it in the right place on the store shelves, get the Walmarts of the world and the GameStops of the world and the Targets and Best Buy and Amazon and all these folks, maximum exposure. So we want somebody who's got very deep, strong relationships. The other piece of it is the publisher is responsible for the marketing budget. Not necessarily all of the marketing. We share that responsibility, but we really go out and look for the people that we think are going to do the best job and put the most behind this. Now, everybody watching this interview is probably aware or was aware before the interview started that NASCAR 14 is coming out this year. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, we have to sell a lot more copies of the game than there are watching this particular interview. So marketing is a very, very key thing. And we want to sell 500,000 to 1 million copies of the game. So we need a strong marketing presence that are going to let NASCAR fans know this is out there. And Deep Silver came in with an amazing proposal, an amazing program. And they've followed through. They've done a fantastic job. It all sort of kicked off with the announcement, but then went right into the Drive for the Cover campaign. You're going to start to see right on plan in the next 7 to 10 days. You'll probably start to see some really cool stuff coming out from us that Deep Silver has been behind. And it's also a follow through on their part. The thing that really caught our eye more than anything is that they see this as a 365-day a year marketing campaign. The game continuously evolves, and we have the highlights that come out as DLC. We have all the additional paint schemes that come out. We're constantly updating the game and evolving things. And they don't want to just ship it and forget about it. They are long-term invested in it, and it's worked out fantastic. They've been great to work with.
I mean, based off of my experience with all these different kinds of games, even after you release the game, you can't just say, all right, we're going on to the next one. I mean, you got to continue to develop inside that game, whether it's patch some bugs or glitches up, add DLC, add extra content. You have to keep marketing the game even after you release it. Otherwise, I mean, it's just not gonna work.
Right, it just fades away. I mean, think of some of the things that we do. We did it last year. We'll be doing it again this year. Actually, we've been doing it since 2011, but we're very close partners with Fox. Now, when you watch the Fox NASCAR broadcast, pretty much any 3D graphics you see during that race came from us. That's part of our partnership. We share all that stuff with them. So we've already sent over God only knows how many gigabytes worth of 3D and 2D art for all 23 tracks in the 2014 season. We've already given them the cars for this year, all that type of stuff. But on a week-to-week basis, if you watch the broadcast last year, there's segments in the pre-race show that are all about the game not about it. Uses the game and the game technology, tell some story that they're trying to tell as part of the broadcast. So the line is very much blurred between what's TV broadcast and what's interactive. And we're doing that on purpose on both sides. Fox wants to be more interactive. We want to get to that bigger audience, and it's been a great partnership working together. But that ties back to Deep Silver. If you're going to do those things with Fox, how do you take advantage of the fact that there's all this great new content coming out? And you might have, 20 million people watch the Daytona 500 or 3 million people watch, in an average race, 5, whatever the numbers are. It's a much larger audience than, knew about the game before that broadcast started. How do we take advantage of that and get more people invested in the game and invested in the sport? So that's a big part of what Deep Silver will be doing. That it's an ongoing thing with throughout the season.
It's great to see Fox Sports as big as they are have a relationship with you guys, and as you said, it's really going to help you in terms of the marketing. It's going to market it to like you said, 20 million people for the Daytona 500 and maybe 3 to 5 million afterwards.
You know?
So it's really going to help you guys a lot. And
Yeah, and it works out great for them too. I mean, the thing that they love the most, certainly we spend a lot of money with them on advertising and things like that, but it's all the graphical assets we're able to share with them. It makes their race broadcast cooler. I remember it was a year ago right now, they were doing the opening animatic for last season's broadcast where
yeah,
the
yeah,
cars are going around the track and it turns into the Fox,
yeah,
NASCAR Fox logo at the end. Well, that was also in the midst of the Gen 6 car coming out. And we had those models already built for our game. Fox didn't have them. They didn't know how to get them. They certainly didn't want to pay to build them. It's like, hey, Ed, have you got this? I said, yeah, we got it. Well, we're happy to share it with you. And we kind of work together on things like that. And it's fun because I remember sitting there, watching the first broadcast of the season going into Daytona. It's like, hey, I know that animatic. That's our stuff. That's kind of cool to see. Every time they cut to a break and you see little 3D cars spinning and things like that, it's like, hey, that came from us. It made the broadcast cooler. It makes you feel good about it. And, hopefully for them, it starts going after that younger demographic that they're trying to get, because in the end, TV is all about advertising,
yep,
right? They
yep.
want to make sure they have maximum eyeballs, but also the younger generation eyeballs, and our stuff helps them do that.
Now, I'm gonna get to the meat of the bone here,
All right.
so to speak, and move on to the game, NASCAR 14. Now, and I've seen this a lot through the community and through the forums and through social media, that one of the biggest features for NASCAR 14 for right now would be the computer AI. And for those of you who are unaware of what this is, it's basically like you're controlling your own car, but for the other 42 drivers on the track, it's computer controlled. So they'll run their line, you'll run your line. It's pretty much self-explanatory there. How has the AI improved with NASCAR 14, and at what tracks will fans see the improvement overall to it?
All right, I promise I'm not going to play politician on you. And you asked one question, I just have my talking points. I'm not going to do that here, but I do want to say something that you alluded to at the beginning of the question, which is the discussion forums. And if you look at Twitter, you look at Facebook, you look at any of those things. Everybody listening to us here, please, I'm serious. Get on those forums. Let us know what you think. We read it all. We listen to it all. If you participated in it, you also know that we get into one-on-one conversations with all you guys. That helps us figure out what we should do with these games going forward. So good, bad, or indifferent, please get on there and let us know what you think. This game it's not being made for us to play. It's being made for you guys to play. And I think you see, as we've evolved from 11 to inside line to 13, now to 14, that evolution has been very much dictated by what we hear in those forums and what we hear on Facebook and Twitter. It's not always friendly. It's not always fun.
No.
Sometimes the truth is harsh. Sometimes it gets a little off the reservation when people go far. But that's just the nature of the beast, right? That happens in any type of mass communication. But seriously, do let us know what you think. We absolutely love that stuff. But to your question about the AI, there has been an awful lot of work done on the AI. Again, going into the game this year, that's something that every year we really focus on how we can make it better. Because in the end, the fantasy is Brandon Butler is racing Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Kyle Busch and Danica Patrick. So you need those drivers to act like the real drivers. So a guy named Ben Nealon is over in the UK. Ben, big shout out for you. He is in charge of the AI for the game. Has done an amazing job this year. I'll answer the last part of your question first. I think you're going to see a huge, huge change in the AI, specifically at the road courses this year. Much smarter, much more passing, but not reckless passing. And those are just a nightmare to code, by the way.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's very tough, but a lot of work has been done there. We've got a real cool advantage in that we get the telemetry data from all the cars from every race. So we have every race last year, 5 times a second, absolutely every piece of data that comes out of those cars. So it's positional, of course. You have 3D positional data and spins and all that stuff, but wheel turn, engine performance data, everything. This is stuff that the teams don't even get. When they go to test, they are allowed to get that stuff, but from the actual race, the teams don't get it. We get it courtesy of a relationship with NASCAR competition, so we can create the challenges in the game, but we also use it for 2 other purposes. As it relates to the AI, we use it to tune the AI so the drivers really react like they do. So if you're getting data 5 times a second on exactly what Kevin Harvick is doing on that track at every one of the 23 tracks and 38 races, including the exhibition races, you can really get down into the dirt on how Harvick performs. And we use all that, and that's how we tune the AI. That's how we create the AI. And over the years, since we started doing these games, we've added more factors in there that will impact the AI. So it's not just an aggression factor or something like that, which you dial up for Kyle Busch and down for Bob Bonnie. It gets into much more nitty-gritty detail than that. And that's because of the telemetry. The other thing we use the telemetry for, is just as an aside, is we've redone and we continue to redo all the tracks based on the telemetry. So every bump in that track, we know, because we got 43 cars 5 times a second going in circles for 500 miles or 500 laps or whatever it may be, with multiple races and years worth of races in our in the databases now. So that's what we do. But I think the AI people will really it's improved across the board. It will always improve year to year. We'll never be done with it. But I think you'll see the biggest change really in the road courses this year. They're a lot of fun.
Now with the road courses, and this is just off my experience, it really wasn't tailored to what you normally see out on the track. I mean, I could bump a guy out of the way, and he would just fall back. It just didn't really feel right to me.
Yeah, but it's a very difficult thing to do, because the physics of the cars, they're just not programmed to work that way. It's not just the right-hand turns; it's the elevations, it's blind spots, and your car coming off the ground. You hit those curbs, you come off the ground. It doesn't happen on an oval. If it does, it's catastrophic.
Yeah.
So it's tough to do that, and not to make excuses, but when you start doing NASCAR games, and NASCAR The Game 2011 was the first one we did, there's a lot that needs to get done just to make it a basic NASCAR game. You can't get to everything you ultimately want to do, which is why, honestly, it's taken us longest to get to the road courses. There, we've got the data of what people play online. We know what people are using. We hear it from the discussion forums. We interview people. We do focus groups. We do all those things, and there's a contingent out there that are rabid fans of the road courses, but realistically, they're the least raced courses. And maybe that's because we hadn't done as good of a job in the AI. Or maybe it's just because they're difficult to drive and people would rather race at Daytona and Talladega, which are the two most popular for obvious reasons. But even Bristol's out there. People love Bristol, even though it's a difficult one to drive.
Yeah.
So hopefully by really focusing more on the road courses, we got people doing more. And also the competition in the real world. I mean, those road course races are now some of the best races to watch. In the past, it used to be, oh, these are snoozer races, nobody passes. And then there's all these, one-hit wonders. Like, what the heck is that guy doing in that car this year? Boris said, really? But now all of the mainstream top drivers have gotten very, very good at road course racing. So again, the real world starts to go hand in hand with the virtual world.
And I mean, to add to what I was just saying, I mean, basically getting that type of data just basically means, hey, this game's going to be realistic and it's going to be completely different for what you've seen in previous NASCAR games to date. And I think for you guys, I think it's really great to see, data like that being used, to create the experience. Like for the challenges, which I'm going to discuss later on, you get the same exact data as what would happen in the race. So, like, for example, with the Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano incident at Auto Club, I mean, you guys would get that data, and you'd be able to use it, so that way the player can recreate the experience of what happened during that race.
Or the famous Juan Pablo Montoya, Jimmy Johnson jumped the restart thing.
That too.
In fact, that was one that NASCAR competition actually came to us and said, hey, could you guys create a video for us using the telemetry and using the game so we can use that as a training tool for all the officials. So we even do things like that within the sport with that telemetry data, which is kind of fun to do. It's always nice when NASCAR calls and they're looking for something like that. Like, sure, we'd be happy to do that.
Like I said, it's really great to see a lot of realism added to the game, and that's probably the biggest thing that I really like about it is the realism. I mean, you could create a NASCAR game and put it out there, say it's a NASCAR game, but there's no realism and there's no, like, you're not really feeling the experience. I mean, there's no point. You know what I'm saying? It's just.
Yep.
And that's
right.
Yeah.
And honestly, when we go back to NASCAR The Game 2011, we got a lot of knocks when it first came out. The flag rules weren't exactly right. Multiplayer wasn't working as it should. if there's one loud and clear message that I hope everybody sees from Eutechnyx or ETX Racing under that brand now is that we don't stop. There's constant evolution. There's constant work going on in the products. You know, NASCAR 14 right now is sitting at Sony and Microsoft for approval. But we're still continuing to work on it because there will be updates as we go forward. You know, we've done multiple games through the years, and we just keep evolving it, and we're not going to stop. We're always going to make them better. You know, we've got the design pretty much set for where we're going with the next game. But that doesn't mean we forget about NASCAR 14. A lot of the stuff that will go into the sequel is already finding its way into suspected updates that we'll do to NASCAR 14. So we keep pushing away, and that goes back to the thing. Let us know what you think. If you think we got something wrong, we'll tackle it. If you look at just the games that are out there right now, if you look at the PC game, NASCAR The Game 2013 versus NASCAR The Game 2011, wow, what a difference in how far we've come. It doesn't mean NASCAR The Game 2011 wasn't a great game. It sold very well. It was well reviewed. People liked it. But we've come a long way, and we'll continue to do that.
Now, in terms of like updating the game, okay, for Inside Line, you guys completely revamped the entire career mode. I remember in 2011, basically all you would be able to do is choose your favorite driver. Like for me, my personal favorite would be Dale Earnhardt Jr. I would go out and use him to try to win the Sprint Cup Championship. But in Inside Line, it was completely different. I mean, you would have your own car, you'd have your own team, and then you'd have to go out and perform every week to get prize money in order to, improve your research and development and to get better parts so that you can go out and beat the likes of Jimmy Johnson and Kyle Busch and Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt Jr. But for NASCAR 14, if you could go into detail, what changes or additions has the team made to career mode for NASCAR 14?
Well, you're right. It was definitely a big switch in career mode from 2011 to Inside Line. And credit where credit is due, that was really Dave Thompson was the champion behind evolving that into something much more of a manager mode. That mode was originally in the design for what we wanted to do with 2011, but there was just not going to be time to do justice. So we came up with a basic career mode that was more of a season mode in the original game. So the evolution of bringing in those sponsors and working your way up and through is what went into Inside Line. This is more of an evolution than a revolution as you go into NASCAR 14. That we've got the same slate of sponsors. The big issue was actually, go back to my licensing and approval stuff for a second, to get National Guard to agree to allow us to take their logo off the number 88 National Guard Chevrolet from Hendrick Motorsports and allow a fan to put it on car design of their choice and work their way up through career mode. Those were some interesting discussions because they're building brand equity in that 88 car. They don't want it on the 57 car or some other unassigned NASCAR number. But the easy sales pitch was, but fans do. And if Brandon Butler is going to go out there and he's a Dale Jr. fan, he'd like to think that, hey, I might have Dale Jr. sponsor his mine someday, and I'm going to work my way up. And if I get that offer from the guys that are on Dale Jr.'s car, your affinity with that brand, what you like in that brand, is even stronger than it was because they support your guy. They don't just support Dale Jr. anymore. They support you. So that's how we got all those things done. And we've continued to evolve that. So all the sponsors, from the major race teams are in there. You will see offers as you work your way up and through. And similar, when you first start out, you're getting lower tier sponsors. And when you get up towards the top, you're starting to run into the Lowe's of the world and the National Guards of the world and those types of sponsors. And then how it impacts in what you invest in the game is where we spent time this year. So there's more realistic impact if you throw more at the chassis program versus R&D. You'll start to see things change differently. Now, funny enough, a lot of that logic came from NASCAR Redline, the mobile game, where that really is a pure NASCAR strategic game. You're playing team owner and crew chief in NASCAR Redline. You play the driver a little bit, but it's really a strategy game. Well, the logic of how things worked in Redline and this impacts that, we're able to take a lot of that and bring it down into the console game and make career mode that much cooler. So you'll see different impacts and much more finite, cooler things going on as you invest.
That's going to be really fun to see. I really can't wait to get into that and see where my career will take me.
Well,
That,
hopefully, somebody's going to go in and win 8 championships before Jimmy Johnson does, right?
yeah.
It's 6 now. Come on, guys, we're counting on you. I know lots of you guys already have. We see all the stats online. People have won lots more championships than 8. Believe me.
now, now I'm gonna move away from the career mode real quick to go to the overall handling and physics of the game. Now, from 2011 to Inside Line, I mean, the damage model really improved
Yep.
exponentially. Um, can you tell me what the team has done in order to better improve the overall handling and the physics of the cars for NASCAR 14?
Yeah, we're constantly, just like we update the AI model, we update and focus on the physics model and the damage model, to your point. Every year, we want to make it that much more realistic. We also want to involve as much of the NASCAR changes as we can. Now, we were building NASCAR The Game Inside Line before the Gen 6 car had ever turned a single lap on a track. So we were making guesses on how that was going to handle and do things. Now, with a year's worth of real racing and telemetry data and being able to talk with the teams and the engineers, all that stuff, we're able to make that car really handle on all 23 tracks exactly like it handled last season. So you'll see a more realistic interpretation of what's there, not necessarily better. We took our best guess, and it was everybody's best guess back then because, like I said, they hadn't raced the car. So you'll see more improvements there. We do stay very much on top of all the NASCAR rule changes and things that are going on. Some of those things are just, they're very difficult to figure out. For example, we still don't know, nor does any NASCAR team know exactly how tall the spoiler is going to be at Daytona in February. So we kind of take our best guess given where NASCAR rules and testing were at the time, and you do things like that. We know there's some pretty significant suspension changes, so we try and reflect that type of stuff as best as we can in the game. So that all goes into the physics model. And then, again, analyzing all that telemetry data of exactly what happened just helps us make the cars handle more realistic. As far as the damage goes, you're right, it was a big change from the original 2011 game to Inside Line. And we continue to do that. One of the challenges we do have is that we're really limited by how many polygons we can push onto that screen per second. And an Xbox 360 is still an Xbox 360. Now, we're also creating the PC version of the game, which we released last year, and there's going to be another one coming out this year, actually in a few weeks. So we're able to do a lot more on the PC. That finds its way into the console. But the stuff with the console is it's constantly a cat and mouse game of how can you cheat something. It's hardware that's been around 5 or 6 years, was designed 8 years ago, and you're trying to figure out how to eke that much more out of it so the game looks better. It's not like a PC where, hey, guess what? Next year there's going to be an NVIDIA 900 card or something crazy like that out there and push more polys on a PC. So we try and take that and move it down and make it cooler and get as much of that into the console game as we can.
I understand that with the console, there's, like you said, there's limits on what you can do with the polygons, and I mean, especially with the PC, you could do a heck of a lot more. And like I said earlier, especially with next gen, you're going to be able to do a heck of a lot more in terms of like the polygons, the features, and all that stuff.
Yep.
So, I mean, the one thing for me about the damage model that, I mean, it irked me a little bit was the fact that you would ride the wall pretty much, and you would get minimum damage. So
there's plenty of friction to slow you down, but it wasn't necessarily ripping the side of your car apart like it would do if you did that on the real track.
Or it would just smudge the paint off.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to get the the ripples and things like that. Again, we tweak and tune that every year. I can't promise you, Brandon, that my God, they got it exactly right this year.
I don't expect that at all. I mean, I understand there's limits.
Yeah, there's exactly there's definitely enhancements made to it. A lot of people, I think people listening to this interview, given the audience, are probably going to be the simulation guys that are running with flags on and full damage on all that stuff.
Yeah, like iRacing.
Like iRacing. And I think, if you look at the stats of most people playing the game, actually just have cosmetic damage on. So we've got that constant balance of we want to make it look cool, and we want to use perceived reality of what would happen. But at the same time, you got to realize if we make the damage look like that, when we turn it on, in the full damage mode, it has to have that same physical reaction to that damage. So yeah, sort of be careful what you wish for.
Now, one of the other big features of NASCAR video games nowadays is the online multiplayer. I mean, really, over the last 4 or 5 years, it's become probably the most important aspect of any racing video game. And like I said, with iRacing, it's become really a big thing.
Absolutely.
Now, can you explain how the netcode will be improved so that there's a better online experience for, through Xbox Live and PlayStation Network for NASCAR 14?
And Steam for NASCAR
And Steam,
14.
yes, I should have.
And actually, that's sort of the point, is that by doing the PC product and working with Steam, we're constantly evolving. And when you've got less limitations, I'll call it, in the PC world, you're able to do things and then adapt that back down into the console world. And also, not to keep harping on Auto Club Revolution, but that is a massive multiplayer game. So a lot of what we learn goes between both products. And honestly, it's no accident that Dave is now focusing Dave Thompson is focusing his efforts on Auto Club Revolution, because a lot of what we did and figured out to make the NASCAR games fun works its way into ACR, but then all the netcode that we're doing over on ACR makes its way back into NASCAR. So although the games have different titles, they very much work together and things flow back and forth. It's sort of like having a multi-car team is really a good analogy. It makes both games stronger. It makes both cars stronger if you have more than one. So a lot of the stuff from ACR, a lot of the stuff from Steam has made its way into NASCAR 14. You're right, multiplayer is a really big deal. We misjudged that way back when we did NASCAR The Game 2011. We put a basic multiplayer mode in there, and people were like, whoa, we're expecting a lot more than that. And we adapted, we evolved. I think we've done a good job with it. We get more comments about multiplayer and more requests about multiplayer than we get probably about any other feature of the game. So we've done a lot with it this year. We've got skill-based matchmaking, which will keep track of your performance and a number of different factors in your performance and help better the field so you have a good racing experience multiplayer. And we've also done the number one thing that people want, and that's online leagues. So you can not only just go out and run against your friends, but you can run a season against your friends, and it will keep track of all that. So you go out and run your own Brandon Butler NASCAR Sprint Cup series, and crown your own champion and set your own schedule. We're really excited about that one. I think that's the number one thing that fans are going to love about this game. That, oh boy, we've been looking for that one.
Now with the league mode, and that was going to be my next question. I mean, what are some of the things with the league mode can you as a league owner do? Can you bring on admins? Can you do changes to the points? Can you update results? Can you post the results? I mean, what can you really do with the league mode that NASCAR gamers that like to do leagues, it'll be something that'll be impressive to them.
Yeah, I mean, there is the administrative function. You can give authorization to other people to do things, but what we're basically going to do is at the end of the race, we're going to deliver the results to the admin, the person who's assigned to run that league, and they can manipulate it from there, somewhat within the game, but certainly outside of the game if they want to extract that stuff and have websites and all that stuff. They'll have access to all that data, so they can set the schedule of what they want to run and go out and track points. And yeah, if there's a controversy, they can say, oh no, this person they're not going to be able to completely play Mike Helton, but to a certain extent you can become Mike Helton in this realm. You just have to get a lot bigger and have that mustache that he has. Big scary Mike. He's actually a really nice guy.
Now the league mode to me is probably my most, how do I say it? It's probably my most requested because, I mean, I used to run into leagues with 2011 and Inside Line, and I keep hearing other people saying, there needs to be a league mode. There needs to be a league mode for people so that way we can...
too, huh? We heard that.
So, excuse me.
Well, it's become common within any multiplayer game, not just a sports game, where you can have your clans or your leagues or whatever phrase you want to put on it. You've got a grouping of people that want to play together and they want to track their individual results together. And and finally we're able to do it in NASCAR 14. So you're not the only one that heard we really want to have that. And it too will evolve over time. We'll put this one out there, and people will let us know what they think and what they'd like to see enhanced. And we'll continue to make that a bigger deal. And I would love to get to a world where, you can have people over here on PlayStations and over here on Xboxes, and somehow they're able to maybe not just directly race against each other, but is there a way to sort of filter that up? Next gen opens up a lot more possibilities. The Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 are pretty securely locked down, and they want a lot of stuff to go on. But if we're going to be releasing PC, PlayStation, and Xbox games at the same time, we don't have an answer for it right now, but it's certainly something we'll look at and say, that's probably a cool direction to figure out something there within the rules of Sony and Microsoft, but they'd allow us to do it.
I'm going to shy away from the online now and talk about what we were saying earlier about the challenges and telemetry data. Will they return for NASCAR 14?
Absolutely. They're called NASCAR Highlights and NASCAR 14, so we just took the challenge name off. But they are there. We'll have a whole bunch of 2013 highlights in the box when it ships, and then we'll be going through the season and producing new ones as we go along. The plan right now is you'll be able to purchase the whole season, or we're going to put it out instead of on a weekly basis. We're going to put it out on a monthly basis. And one of the big reasons for doing that is that we'd sit there week to week, and some weeks the races were a little difficult to come up with some really cool challenges and justify spending a couple dollars to download that. So what we're going to do is go to more of a monthly type of release. We'll still have challenges from every race we'll be creating. We'll still be talking about those things on Fox and all the things that are coming, but we'll be able to put a cooler collection of challenges together for a lower price. And get even more people playing those things. But same deal, we'll be using the telemetry data to create these things. You'll see a little bit more production value put into them, so the setups for them have voiceovers and some really cool stuff going on there. In fact, Doug Rice has already done the voiceovers for us for the ones that are in the box. We'll be using different personalities from radio and TV as the season goes on to do those. But same idea. We basically use the telemetry data to show you what happened, back it up to a point where you can change history, and then drop you into it. So once you start from that point, every time you play it, it's a little bit different. And fingers crossed, hopefully we have some really cool, controversial moments in all 38 races.
And going back to what you were saying about the season pass thing, have you guys considered perhaps doing like a basic DLC pass for like everything?
We have definitely toyed with that. We have the season pass for the highlights, and I know you're referring to all the paint schemes and cars. We won't be doing that in 14. It's something we continue to talk about. It's hard. Sitting here in January, it's very hard for us to know how many cars we're actually going to release this year. We don't know how many paint schemes most of the teams are going to run. Some of them we've already got multiple paint schemes for. Some of them we just don't. So it's kind of hard to know how big the content would be.
Right.
I think eventually you'll see something like that where it's an all-you-can-eat plan. It's like, here you go, and then on a monthly basis, just do this, or buy the whole season and we'll give you absolutely everything out of the gate. I think we'll probably see that. You'll probably see us, because it's easier to do things on PC than it is on console to test things, because keep an eye over there on the PC product. I think maybe you'll see us, try some things out over there, and then if it works, we can take it to Sony and Microsoft and try and do it online with them.
Said with the paint schemes, do you guys plan on releasing DLC for 2014, like with paint schemes, like you did with, NASCAR The Game 2013 on PC?
Well, here's the first surprise. The game is going to ship with the 2014 cars in it. And boy, did that make for a miserable November and December to try and get all that stuff done and approved, because believe it or not, we had to submit this game to Sony and Microsoft in early December. So everybody thinks, oh, you're going to ship in February. You submit it to Sony and Microsoft a couple weeks before. No, it doesn't work that way. You can do that with a PC product, but you can't do that with a console product. So the game will ship with 43 2014 drivers, 43 2014 paint schemes. The ones that are going to be in the retail package are what we were able to get from the teams and get approved when we had to submit to Sony and Microsoft. We continue to work on those, and there will be an update to make them all the Daytona 500 cars, quote unquote. Because now when we do the paint schemes, we actually name them after a race instead of primary, secondary, whatever. We name it after the race. So we will be updating those cars, and then as the season goes on, the plan is to do as many of the special paint schemes they run every week, and release those. In fact, we have a partnership with NASCAR.com this year with their paint scheme preview.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be supplying to them the graphics for those. So they're not going to be relying on flat art or photos like J-Ski uses, something like that. We're going to give them high-res renders of all the cars that we create and push those out on NASCAR.com. So there will be those, and like I said, it was a pretty crazy effort to try and get all that stuff straightened out, because there were a lot of teams that didn't even have drivers signed.
Right.
And then we ran into things like the number 3 Dow car, where the non-disclosure agreements we had to even get the art on that car. It was just unbelievable, because it's a lot of money behind that, right? And the sponsor coming into the sport like that and picking up that number. Everybody Austin Dillon was going to race. Everybody assumed it was the number 3. And everybody kind of figured, there's going to be a Cheerios car because they've been with him. It's like, well, okay, those were right, but there was one big surprise that nobody knew. And those are real big things that the teams want to control the messaging on. So we struggle a lot with that, and we'll struggle with that next season. There were times, and it was I can't even think of the race last year. It might have been Richmond. I think it was Richmond, where Dale Earnhardt Jr. drove the Time Warner cable car. And they didn't announce it until the day before race day. The car was made, it was put on the hauler, it was driven down there, but until they pushed it off the hauler, they hadn't done the announcement. Well, we created that car. We had a DLC pack coming out that weekend. It's like, please, 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 can we put it out? They're like, no, can't do it. Because there's a lot of money that Time Warner is putting into that thing to make a big deal and a big splash. But there's still some cars we have in the game, even though they're at Sony and Microsoft right now. There's cars in the game that we can't take screenshots of and put out. I mean, it even gets down to the silly level that there's one angle on one car that we still can't show. It's the back bumper, the TV panel on one particular car. We can't show it. Sponsor just, I look at it, it's like, really? That's all right, whatever. We won't do that.
Now, in terms of when you go out and sell the game, like when you put it out to Amazon, GameStop, Walmart, etc., I mean, it's no secret that fans will pre-order the games when there's a bonus to them.
Yep.
Now, are there any plans for any pre-order bonuses for NASCAR 14, or is that something that you can't go into just yet?
Oh, man, I wish I could tell you. Yes, I wish I could tell you some of the specifics. But let's just say that with pretty much all the major retailers that you can come up with, the Deep Silver team, who also works with Square Enix, the channel team has done an incredible job at putting together deals with incentives. Stay tuned. You'll probably see some announcements, maybe even this week, specific to those things, complete with, renders and all kinds of things of what we actually might be up to. So some cool things going on with virtual goods, and also one really cool one having to do with some physical stuff. So I'll just tease it with that, but stay tuned. And I think within the next week you're going to see some really cool stuff come out from us. Like I said, with pictures and renders, some really neat stuff.
Now, and I know we talked about this, beforehand, but what was the deciding factor towards releasing NASCAR 14 on Xbox 360, PS3, and PC? And is there really a possibility that you might decide, maybe we could go to next gen?
Next gen is something that we debated a lot and continue to take a good look at. I'll give you the best example I can give you why we made the decision we made. And there was a very famous article put out about the new Gran Turismo. And an executive at Sony Polyphony said, why would I put the new Gran Turismo out on PlayStation 4? There's exactly 0 PlayStation 4 units in the channel right now, and there's 150 million PlayStation 3s in active use. So if Sony didn't think it was a good idea because there wasn't enough hardware, what should we think? And that particular decision by Sony was very indicative. For launch titles, you saw that there were not really a lot of Xbox One and PlayStation 4 games out there.
No.
The franchises you would expect to see. And with all due respect to those games, the PlayStation 4 version was basically the PlayStation 3 version at a higher resolution and a higher frame rate. It wasn't like there was specific content because the development kits weren't out there long enough. You really weren't able to do a lot with it. You had to have Call of Duty out there. You had to have Madden out there. You have to have FIFA out there. I get that. And we want to have NASCAR out there. Believe me, we want to have NASCAR out there. But again, you've got to make sure that you're going to at least break even and not kill yourself by putting something out there. Because for us to create, not to give you exact numbers, but for us to create a next-gen engine, a next-gen title, we're talking about a development cost that's somewhere in the vicinity of, for the first one, probably be 3 or 4 times the cost of us creating a current gen game, because we already have the engine built for the current gen. So you have to spend, or you have to make 3 or 4 times as much money. Well, if we've got in America, 150 to 200 million active Xbox 360s and PlayStation 3s, and total worldwide sales sitting here today of PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are less than 6 million. That's a pretty tough one to work your way through and say, yeah, that makes sense. Other than the ego factor, which is a good thing. The ego factor, we want to be there. We need to be there. We do. And yeah, we will eventually come out with a next-gen game. I can't tell you for sure when it's going to be. We're deciding right now, is it a 15 title? Almost certainly not a 14 title, though. There's not enough time to do it anyway. We've already submitted Sony and Microsoft this game. We could potentially get something done for the end of the year, but that doesn't make sense. So no definitive plans other than we're absolutely going to do that someday, but the timing's got to be right. There's got to be enough of that hardware in the hands of NASCAR fans that we're going to sell the game.
And now I do want to get into the Drive for the Cover campaign. I mean, in 2012, you guys announced the campaign with Activision to allow fans the opportunity to vote for their favorite driver to get on the cover of Inside Line. And, obviously Dale Jr. won that by a landslide. But, I mean, this past November, you guys, you brought it back for a second time. And the fans ultimately decided Tony Stewart should be on the cover. I mean, as it was obviously put out there. But from a personal standpoint, and I got to ask you this question because I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. Do you think that this campaign has been successful, not just for Eutechnyx, but for NASCAR and its partners as well?
I think it has, and NASCAR does as well. It was when we talked about doing it again for a second year, it very quickly turned to it would just be another popularity contest for Dale Earnhardt Jr. What did he win? His 12th, most popular driver award this year?
Yeah.
Now, he wins every popularity contest in sight. And he's a great guy. And he's not out there to just keep winning all this stuff. And he is incredibly popular. He does sell the most merchandise. But, the suggestion came up. It's like, well, what if we sort of had a Hall of Fame and we retired the guys that have been on the cover? And then somebody in the back of the room kind of laughed and said, well, you'll be good for 43 years then, won't you? Fortunately, new drivers come up and suddenly there's the Chase Elliott's and the Austin Dillons of the world that come and fill.
Yeah, and the Kyle Larsons.
We kind of like the idea of saying, okay, Dale, you can sort of be the host and moderator of this thing as we go through. But, hand the mantle over to somebody else. And everybody really loved that idea. And then we started going down the path, and it worked out incredibly well. Now, we were honestly very surprised by the reaction to Tony. I can tell you, and this isn't to slam our good friend Dale Earnhardt Jr., but in the final round of this year's vote, Tony Stewart had more votes than Dale Jr. had the year before.
Wow.
And that kind of says a lot. To me, what it does, and we've sort of, obviously people have seen, I think, the box cover for the game by now, with Tony on the cover. Fans really want him back, and there was a very strong vote based on the fact that Tony wasn't around on the track, and it showed itself round after round after round as we went through this thing. And he was just killing everybody in sight in every round. And when you look at the real votes that come in, there were a lot of people that were literally coming in, and it didn't matter. You started with 32 drivers. We had people that were coming in, voting for Tony, and leaving. One vote. That's all they wanted to do. We want Tony. To me, that's a great thing for the sport.
It really is. I mean, it doesn't mean, oh, it's going to be another popularity contest, blah, 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 blah. I mean, for Tony Stewart to get that amount of support from people because they want him back, I mean, it really does show how much people care. Yeah. And it just shows how much, how successful this Drive for the Cover campaign really was.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, Tony himself was, I don't know if humbled is the right word, but he was really honored that there was that kind of reaction. And it was Tony, it was across Stewart Haas and all the folks that we do there. They were just like, wow, this is really, really awesome. You see the stuff where it's like, yeah, we want him back, and Tony, we love you, and smoke will rise, and all that stuff that was going on. But to put it to a vote, I mean, as tacky as that sounds, but it manifested itself as a popularity vote. And I honestly don't know what would have happened if Junior was in the vote this year because of what happened to Tony.
You could have saw like a neck and neck type of deal.
Yeah, he still might have won. I just don't know because he got that many votes and outdid what Dale Jr. did. But overall, we had more votes this year than we did the year before too, because more people knew about the contest. I don't know. It would have been very interesting, but I think it's a great thing for the sport that somebody else comes along, shows that star power, shows that popularity. Shakes things up a little bit, to have that. I mean, we went out of our way, and I got to give credit to Deep Silver for really championing, Jeremy Grenner, who's a marketing guy there, for really championing the look of that box, where we really went for this really, dark, dramatic, moody Tony Stewart. And it ended up coinciding because if Austin Dillon had won, it might not have been as exciting as Tony. It worked out because it was the guy that fit the mood, but we chose the mood of that box cover before we knew who was going to win Drive for the Cover. And to have that whole thing sort of fit together, and Tony, and I'll tell you, when you and I can talk offline, but when you see the trailer that comes out for the game, I'll give away one secret. Tony is in it. There's live action footage of Tony. Man, that guy's attitude is absolutely the best. And there was one line at the end of this first trailer that you guys are going to see soon that you're going to play it over and over and over again. If you're a Tony Stewart fan, you're going to put it on endless loop. It's awesome. It's really, really great. And so, yeah, I think it's great for the sport. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but I
agree with you. I 100% agree with you that, for the cover and for, NASCAR 14, with Tony Stewart out, it's only fitting to see him, on the cover making his comeback. And I mean, really, coincidentally, Tony Stewart, number 14, NASCAR 14. I mean, if you put it that way.
Yeah, it just all worked out.
Yeah,
and by the way, whoever did the NASCAR meme with Tony Stewart on the scooter on the cover of NASCAR 14, that was very clever. We love that one. And he got a big kick out of that one as well, but that didn't make it on the box cover, sorry.
Maybe you can make it as like a printout so that people can put it on there. I mean, anything's possible, I would think. Well, Ed, I think that's going to about wrap things up here for our chat. I really do appreciate you taking the time to
glad to do it.
Chat with me. I really do enjoy talking to you.
We usually just talk by email. Getting on Skype and doing a big long 2-hour conversation's been fun.
Yeah, it's fun. I really do enjoy it. And everybody at popularspeed.com, we really do appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Well, thank you very much. Remember, hop on etxracing.com. Let us know what you think, what ideas you've got. I mean, I can't say that enough. We love hearing from you guys, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or whether it's ugly. We don't care. Everything helps. So chime in. It helps us a lot.
All righty. Thanks again, Ed. For popularspeed.com, I'm Brandon Butler. See you guys next time.